any official, certainly a U.S. congressman or a U.S. senator. That is really very special to us here in Boca. And so I'm very, very honored to be able to be here today. Our speaker tonight, as you know, is a man who knows the history of how we got to where we are today. He is a man who says it all in a previous quote that states, in his words, "I have traded my camouflage uniform for a suit, but the commitment to protect the people of the United States is still my mission." We could stop there and go home. That is what we need to know. We must know that someone is there to protect our rights. And it is time to finally fix Washington, D.C., because there's no question but that we all here tonight and elsewhere across this land know that it is broken. A deficit of $13 trillion and counting just simply is not sustainable. Questions need to be asked and answered. Now I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to stop here just for one moment. And I'm going to say that if we have any hecklers, we're going to treat you like children, and you're going to have to go to timeout. Timeout is going to be outside, and we're going to resume our evening, and we're going to have a very respectful evening tonight where the congressman is able to answer questions and move on with the speech that he intends to give and that I intend to give. So here we go. So we're going to try one more time to see how we behave. And then I'm going to ask the police officers that are in the room to please escort the hecklers out to their timeout location. Okay, here we go. We have to balance our city budget in the city of Boca Raton. And every city in the entire country has to balance their budget. So I don't understand, and I'm sure you don't understand, why the federal government doesn't. And it's about time that we start asking those questions and get answers, because it just simply does not make sense. But here's the good news, and there is some really, really good news. There are new voices, many new voices in the nation's capital today that know that it is time to act and to take action. There are new voices that know we can no longer kick the can down the road for my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and many of your own children. There are new voices that are listening to us and putting our suggestions and our ideals into practice. Primarily to get America on track and working again for all of us. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome perhaps the most important of those new voices on Capitol Hill, our Congressman, Allen West.
Thank you, Mayor Welchel. Also, Elizabeth, thank you so much for hosting this. And thanks to each and every one of you for coming out to this town hall meeting. The most important thing about a town hall meeting is one simple thing. I made a commitment and I made a promise back when I was elected, that each and every month that I'd come back and I'd have 2 town hall meetings. One down in Broward and one up here in Palm Beach. So that each and every month you know exactly what is happening in Washington, D.C. You know exactly the decisions that are being made in Washington, D.C. You know exactly what I'm voting on. And I want you to know the exact type of information that I get to see. Because only by ensuring that we have an educated and informed electorate are we going to be able to move this country forward and rectify the economic situation that we have in which we have found ourselves. That if we are not careful, we are not going to leave the exact same United States of America to our children and grandchildren. That's the threat that we have. And I have a commitment to my 18 and 14-year-old daughters that we're not going to do that. And I have a commitment to each and every one of you that we're not going to do that. And as the mayor said, the commitment that I had to you back on the 31st of July, 1982, when I took the oath of office as a second lieutenant, has not changed. It's just the attire that I wear has changed. But it's still about protecting your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. Now, if you look around here, you see a lot of media cameras. And the media is here because they want us in the show. Something they can put on the news, something they can put out on YouTube or what have you. But I think the most important thing that we can show them right here in South Florida, we can show them what honor, character, and integrity means. We can show them how the American people understand the relationship between a congressional representative within a representative democracy. So thank you for being here. We'll get started first time. Go back. Ignorance is bliss. Next slide. Okay, we have 2 district offices. For the people that reside here, and one thing I want to say before I get started, to the Boca Raton Navy ROTC, thanks for carrying me off. We have 2 district offices. For you all that are here in Boca Raton, probably the closest district office is the one located right down I-95, the Cypress Creek exit. You go west on Cypress Creek, you take the first right, which is Andrews Avenue, and you'll find the Fort Lauderdale office. You go further up in West Palm Beach, please go to the Palm Beach office, which is on Dixie Highway, just south of the intersection with Belvedere. Our staff is there. They're there to serve each and every one of you to make sure that we can deal with your issues that you have. And we can make sure that I understand what is going on down in the district. Next slide. Okay, the congressional calendar. Here we are. As you can see, we've had 2 weeks with this Easter recess. And, of course, some of you may remember that there was a freshman congressman that wrote a letter to the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, that said, I didn't think 153 days was really good as far as the work schedule being in session. And I still don't think that way. Because the times that we have had out of session, we've seen Standard & Poor's come down and say that our bond rating could be taken from stable down to negative, which means that the 6% interest that we pay on our debt could possibly go up to as high as 20%. And that would be just absolutely unsustainable. And the last time that I was away on a recess or constituent work week, I woke up and I saw a Tomahawk cruise business flying into Libya. So we've got to make sure that we are up there in Washington, D.C. as much as possible to rectify the situations we have here in this country. But I'll be heading back up next week, Monday, to go back into session. Next slide. 2 committees that I serve on. The Armed Services Committee, of course that would make sense, the guys have been in the military for 22 years, and then also the Small Business Committee. And I think that helps me to get a really good focus on economic security and job security. Economic security and national security.
What have you done to job security?
Well, I'm about to show you that, if you don't mind. But if you drive up Highway 1,
He's been there for 2 years.
from Fort Lauderdale Airport up to the Jupiter, and you'll see closed upon closed upon closed stores. We got to turn that around. We got to provide the conditions by which our small businesses can grow. Next slide. Okay, legislation over the last 30 days. The one thing I want to point out is H.R. 1246. Sitting on the Armed Services Committee, I found a graceful program in the Department of Defense. And we brought forth a piece of legislation that said there was a 10% decrease or cut that we could have in That was $35.7 million in fiscal year 2012. It ends up being about $100 million over a 5-year period. The one thing that I want you to pay attention to is that piece of legislation passed unanimously 393 to 0. Now, some people will say that doesn't amount to anything. But the important thing that you need to realize is this. If every single member of Congress that was up there in Washington, D.C., every month in their respective committees look for one wasteful spending program, think what that would do for the debt and the deficit that we have in the United States of America. So I will continue to do that each and every time. H.R. 1473, which was the continuing resolution for fiscal year 2011. I voted no against that, against my own leadership, because when they went into this deal and they said that this was the largest ever spending cuts in the history of the United States of America, $38.5 billion. When you think about the fact that we are at $14.3 trillion in debt, 3 years of deficits of 1.42, 1.29, and now $1.65 trillion. And then when you sat back and you waited and you start to peel beyond your back, you found out that 38.5 was actually 28.5. And then when the CBO came back and scored it, it was actually down to about $362 million. That's why I voted against that. The other thing was that this fiscal year 2011 continuing resolution was the highest appropriations bill in the history of the United States of America at $1.05 trillion. We have got to curtail the spending up in Washington, D.C. We're going in the wrong direction. That's why I voted no. Next slide. Some of the legislation that I've been co-sponsored. I want you to pay attention to the first two. I've also sent a letter over to Ambassador Susan Rice, the Ambassador of the United Nations, United States to the United Nations, because I'm very concerned about the unilateral agreement of recognizing a Palestinian state which could come up this summer. Because I feel that if we don't take care of the situation of Hamas or Hezbollah, some of the other terrorist activities that come out of those areas, being in Gaza, being in southern Lebanon, and also being in the quote-unquote Palestinian-controlled areas, it could be an absolute nightmare for Israel. They could find themselves in a three-front war. So that's why I signed on to that legislation. We got to stay focused on military health care. For you veterans out there, they are talking about trying to raise the premiums on TRICARE. That was brought before us at the military subcommittee hearing. I will not allow that to happen. There are some other things that we can do to curtail the spending for military health care. Another thing for our veterans, I want you to see here, a circuit court out in California made a ruling that said that it was part of a person's free speech or free expression that they could go out and buy a military uniform and put on whatever type of medals that they want to impersonate any soldier. Well, that's one of the things that we have to turn, because I think that's an absolute slap in the face of the men and women that have served in our military. H.R. 1255. We should never have an opportunity again where we talk about a government shutdown. One of the other letters that I've written is to the Appropriations Chairman, Hal Rogers, because when you look at the 13 some odd appropriations bills that come out of the House of Representatives that we'll start working on in May, we need to have a tiered prioritized system that shows what are the primary functions, the priorities for the federal government as far as spending. And when we come up with those three tiers and we rank order those appropriations bills to get them passed through the Senate and of course signed by the President, then we can start from the bottom up, start looking at where do we look for cuts in spending of the federal government. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And as the mayor said, we cannot continue to run Washington, D.C. where there are no priorities. There is no budget. No one here can run their household like that or their businesses like that. We've got to turn around Washington, D.C. The other thing is 1040. I'm an advocate of a flat tax. I think that the progressive tax